The chandeliers sparkled above the grand ballroom, scattering light across polished marble floors and tables draped in white linen and golden trim. Music from a live string quartet hummed in the background, weaving through the murmurs of conversation and the clink of glasses. Ethan Blackwell stood at the center of it all, the billionaire host of the evening's charity gala, a man who had built empires and turned fortunes with little more than his intuition and iron will. Tonight, though, he wasn't thinking about mergers or global ventures. He was thinking about the woman at his side, Isabella. She was radiant, her fitted gown shimmering like liquid silver under the light, her smile calculated yet irresistible as she charmed dignitaries, investors, and celebrities alike. She leaned into Ethan as if she belonged in this world of wealth and power, and perhaps she did. Or so Ethan thought. They were the perfect couple in the eyes of the room, a modern-day fairy tale. Isabella laughed musically at a senator's anecdote, her hand gently squeezing Ethan's arm, as though reminding the world that he was hers. She seemed to glide from guest to guest, and every man's eyes lingered just a second too long when she passed. Ethan felt a flicker of pride. He had chosen well. Yet beneath that pride was something quieter, something he couldn't name. A sense that the perfection he was displaying tonight was too rehearsed, too polished. But he dismissed it. After all, doubt was a habit he'd trained out of himself long ago. A waiter passed by with a tray of champagne flutes. Isabella plucked one with elegant fingers, pressing it into Ethan's hand before lifting another for herself. "A toast," she whispered, tilting her head so her earrings caught the light. "To us. To everything we've built together." Her voice was soft, persuasive, and threaded with a sweetness that seemed almost rehearsed. Ethan smiled faintly, lifting the glass, though he hadn't yet taken a sip. His eyes followed her as she laughed again, her lips brushing the rim of her flute before lowering it with grace. As he moved toward the edge of the ballroom, a shift in the air caught his attention. The doorman, a man Ethan had seen countless times over the years, always silent, always professional, was standing closer than usual, his gaze fixed firmly on him. It was unusual. Doormen were trained to blend into the background, to serve without drawing notice. Ethan slowed his step, and in that fraction of stillness, the man leaned slightly forward. His voice was nearly inaudible, but the words sliced through the gala's hum like a razor. "Sir, there's something in your drink." Ethan froze. His fingers tightened around the delicate stem of the glass. For an instant, he thought he had misheard. The music swelled. A burst of applause rang out from another corner of the room, but the doorman's eyes, steady, grave, and unmistakably urgent, held his. Ethan's pulse quickened, though his expression did not betray it. He had learned long ago to wear his composure like armor. Slowly, he inclined his head in acknowledgement, as though the man had merely greeted him. Then he glanced at the champagne in his hand, golden bubbles rising to the surface, a picture of celebration and promise. Behind him, Isabella approached, her smile glowing as though she'd rehearsed it in the mirror. "Darling, why aren't you drinking?" she asked lightly, touching his arm. Her voice carried just the faintest edge of insistence. Her eyes flickered to the glass, then back to him, expectant. For the first time all evening, Ethan's confidence faltered. The warning replayed in his head, whispering beneath the music and chatter. "There's something in your drink." He studied Isabella carefully. The tilt of her smile, the way her gaze lingered too long on the flute, the subtle quickness of her breath as she urged him to sip. That quiet unease he had felt earlier swelled, pressing against his composure, demanding to be acknowledged. He lifted the glass, swirling it gently, letting the bubbles rise and fall. His lips curved in a practiced smile, but his mind was already sharpening, questioning, calculating. He would not drink. Not yet. Not until he understood what game was being played here, and by whom. The gala shimmered on, unaware that a single whispered warning had shifted the entire course of Ethan Blackwell's night. What had begun as an evening of celebration was now something else entirely, the start of a dangerous unraveling. Ethan's fingers still gripped the glass as he moved through the crowd, his smile fixed in place like a mask. No one would suspect the storm brewing inside him. He was too experienced at playing this role, the unshakable billionaire, the man who controlled every variable in the room. Yet tonight, for the first time in years, he felt an edge of vulnerability. The doorman's warning wasn't something he could ignore. A lifetime of business had taught him to read people, to measure sincerity. The man's eyes had held no malice, only urgency. It hadn't been a trick. Something was wrong. Isabella stayed close, her laughter a shade too bright, her touch constant on his arm as though tethering him to her. "Everyone adores you tonight," she murmured, pressing her lips to his cheek before turning her attention to the crowd again. Her champagne flute was half empty now, and she seemed more eager than ever for him to drink his. Every few minutes her gaze would flit back to the golden liquid in his glass, almost as though she were tracking time. Instead of taking a sip, Ethan let the champagne hover casually near his lips, lowering it at the last second with a chuckle when another guest interrupted. He had perfected the art of distraction, and tonight it served him well. He mingled, exchanged polite words, made promises of donations, and complimented gowns and speeches, all while avoiding the trap disguised as celebration. Yet with each passing moment, the unease inside him grew heavier. When Isabella excused herself to powder her nose, Ethan saw his chance. He waited until her figure disappeared through the archway, then slipped quietly after her, careful to keep his distance. His intuition hummed, guiding his steps. He knew when to trust it. It had never failed him in business, and he doubted it would fail him in matters of the heart. The corridor outside the ballroom was dimmer, quieter. Voices echoed faintly from behind closed doors. Ethan followed the soft click of Isabella's heels until they stopped near a side entrance, just beyond the kitchens. He pressed himself against the wall, listening. Her voice floated through the crack of a half-open door, stripped of its sweetness. "It's in his drink. Stop asking me if I'm sure. Tonight has to work." The sharpness in her tone sliced through Ethan's chest. His breath slowed, heavy, dangerous. "Don't you understand? Once he's gone, everything is ours. We don't need to pretend anymore." A muffled voice replied, too low for Ethan to make out. Isabella hissed, "No, I can't stall forever. He's suspicious already, but as long as he drinks it before the night is over, no one will question anything. He'll just collapse. They'll call it stress. Or his heart. Billionaires don't live forever, right?" She laughed then, a bitter, careless sound that didn't belong to the woman Ethan thought he knew. Every muscle in his body tensed. He had heard enough to confirm what the doorman had warned him of. The woman on his arm tonight, the one the world believed he adored, was plotting his death. Not for passion, not even out of anger, but for greed. The thought sickened him. Isabella wasn't merely disloyal, she was lethal. Ethan withdrew silently, his mind already racing ahead. He could storm in and confront her now, but that would be reckless. He would get no proof, and Isabella would slip through with excuses and charm. No, he needed to be smarter than that. He needed to expose her publicly, to strip away her mask before everyone she had fooled. When he returned to the ballroom, Isabella was already there again, her smile polished, her champagne glass freshly filled. "There you are," she said, her voice honeyed. "I thought I lost you." "Never," Ethan murmured smoothly, brushing his lips against her temple. To the room, it looked like an affectionate moment. To Ethan, it was strategy. He would not let her see his hand yet. Not until the perfect moment. As the evening stretched on, Ethan's mind spun its web. He greeted guests, laughed when expected, but beneath the surface he was orchestrating a trap. Isabella wanted him to drink. Then he would make her reveal why. In front of everyone, where no denial could save her. He raised his glass once more, pretending cheer, but his eyes were cold as steel. Tonight wasn't just a gala anymore, it had become a battleground. The evening wore on, and the ballroom pulsed with energy, music swelling, guests dancing, champagne flowing. Ethan moved through it all with the precision of a man waiting for the right moment to strike. His smile never faltered, but his gaze sharpened, studying Isabella as if she were a puzzle he had already solved but wanted the world to witness unraveling. She remained by his side, radiant and poised, her silver gown catching every light, her laughter like wind chimes in a storm. To everyone else, she was the image of a devoted fiancée. To Ethan, she was a snake coiled in silk. The champagne flute still rested in his hand, untouched though he disguised it with practiced ease. He had mastered the art of appearing indulgent without ever yielding control. Tonight, that skill would save him. Isabella's eyes flicked to his glass again and again, impatience betraying the calm exterior she tried to maintain. He caught it each time, storing the evidence away in the vault of his memory. The crowd might see only her charm, but Ethan saw the cracks forming. When the orchestra shifted to a triumphant melody, Ethan knew the moment had come. He guided Isabella toward the center of the room, lifting his hand slightly to draw the attention of the guests. Conversations quieted, eyes turned, and soon the spotlight belonged solely to him. Ethan thrived in moments like these. Commanding a room was as natural as breathing. "My friends," he began, his deep voice carrying effortlessly, "tonight we gather not only to celebrate the causes we champion, but also to celebrate love. I have been blessed to find a woman who has captured hearts beyond just my own." His arm circled Isabella's waist, pulling her closer, and she tilted her head toward him with a radiant smile that looked perfect in every way, until Ethan saw the nervous flicker in her eyes. "Tonight, I'd like us to raise a glass." He lifted his champagne flute high, the golden liquid shimmering beneath the chandelier's glow. The crowd echoed his motion, glasses rising in unison. Isabella did the same, though her hand trembled ever so slightly. Ethan caught it, and the corner of his mouth curved, not in affection, but in resolve. "But," he continued smoothly, "before I drink, I'd like my beloved Isabella to honor us with the first sip. After all, she has always said that what's mine is hers, and what's hers is mine. Tonight, let us prove that we truly share everything." Gasps rippled lightly through the room, followed by approving laughter. It seemed a romantic gesture to those who watched. To Isabella, it was a dagger. Her eyes widened for the briefest second, then she forced a laugh, brushing her fingers over Ethan's arm. "Darling, you know I hate being the center of attention," she whispered, her voice carrying just enough for those nearest to hear. "Why don't you go first?" Ethan's smile hardened. "No, love, please. Just one sip. For us." He pressed the glass gently into her hand, his expression so calm it was terrifying. Isabella hesitated, her throat working as she tried to swallow her panic. She looked around, the weight of every gaze pressing down on her. The senator's wife smiled encouragingly, a pair of photographers leaned in for a better shot, and the orchestra played softer, sensing the drama unfolding. Isabella's mask faltered, her grip tightening on the flute. She stammered, eyes darting back to Ethan. For the first time all evening, she seemed cornered. "I really think you should." Ethan leaned closer, his lips near her ear though his voice was sharp enough for the room to hear. "Drink, Isabella. Or tell them why you won't." The silence that followed was electric, a taut string ready to snap. Isabella's face drained of color, her polished charm unraveling at last. She lowered the glass slightly, her hand trembling so violently that droplets spilled onto her gown. Murmurs spread across the crowd, confusion rising into suspicion. Ethan didn't move, his gaze locked on her, giving her no escape. Finally, Isabella's composure shattered. "Fine," she spat, her voice harsh, ugly, nothing like the angelic tone she'd worn all night. "You want the truth. I never loved you. I never wanted you. All I wanted was your money." Gasps exploded through the ballroom, people recoiling as though struck. Cameras flashed, guests whispered frantically, scandal unfolding in real time. Isabella's mask had not only slipped, it had shattered completely. Ethan lowered his glass, calm as stone, while the woman beside him dissolved under the weight of her own venom. The trap had sprung, and she had fallen directly into it. The ballroom erupted into chaos the moment Isabella's words cut through the air. Gasps, whispers, and even a few shouts filled the gilded room, the scandal electrifying every guest present. Socialites pressed hands to their pearls, reporters scribbled frantically in notebooks, and a senator muttered, "Good heavens," as though he had just witnessed a public execution. The orchestra faltered into silence, their bows frozen midair. All eyes were on Isabella, who stood trembling, her silver gown now streaked with champagne, her face contorted with rage and panic. Ethan didn't move at first. He stood tall, composed, his glass still in hand. He had learned long ago that silence, when wielded properly, was more powerful than any speech. Let them absorb her confession. Let them see her for what she truly was. When the murmurs rose to a fever pitch, Ethan finally stepped forward, his voice cutting cleanly through the din. "You see, ladies and gentlemen," he began, his tone smooth, controlled, but edged with steel, "this evening was meant to celebrate love and generosity. But love, as some of you have now seen, can be a mask. A dangerous mask. He turned to Isabella, his gaze steady, unwavering. I was warned tonight, just before I took my first sip of champagne. A man I trust, a man who has no reason to lie, told me there was something in my drink. Poison. The word dropped into the room like a stone, silencing even the harshest whispers. Faces paled, eyes widened, and several guests instinctively looked down at their own glasses. Ethan let the pause linger before continuing. I chose not to drink. Instead, I chose to watch. And I saw her, my fiancée, push me, urge me, almost beg me to finish the glass. I let it pass, thinking perhaps I was mistaken. But then I followed her. I heard her speaking, not to a friend, not to a guest, but to her lover. And she said, his voice grew colder, louder. Once he's gone, everything is ours. The room erupted again, this time with outrage. A woman gasped so loudly it echoed, while another whispered fiercely to her husband. I knew there was something off about her. Cameras flashed like lightning, desperate to capture every angle of Isabella's crumbling facade. Isabella shook her head violently, her eyes darting, desperate for an escape. He's lying, she shrieked, her polished voice gone, replaced with something raw and desperate. He's twisting everything. I never said enough. Ethan's single word thundered louder than her protest. He held up a small device he had slipped into his pocket earlier, the voice recorder on his phone. He pressed a button, and Isabella's own voice spilled into the ballroom. Harsh, venomous, exact. It's in his drink. Stop asking me if I'm sure. Tonight has to work. Don't you understand? Once he's gone, everything is ours. We don't need to pretend anymore. The recording played on, her bitter laugh echoing across the marble floors. By the time it ended, Isabella's knees buckled, and she clutched the back of a chair to steady herself. The crowd wasn't silent anymore. They hissed, they muttered, they recoiled as if her very presence was toxic. She wasn't the sparkling fiancée now, she was a pariah, stripped bare in front of society's finest. Ethan stepped closer, his voice lower now, almost intimate but audible to all. You would have taken everything from me. My life, my trust, my future. But tonight, Isabella, you've taken only one thing, your mask. And I assure you, it will never fit again. Security moved forward on Ethan's subtle nod. Isabella thrashed as they took her by the arms, her protests dissolving into shrieks. You'll regret this, Ethan. You'll regret everything. But no one listened. No one defended her. The glittering crowd parted like water as she was dragged out, her heels scraping against the marble, her once pristine gown torn and stained. When the doors closed behind her, silence settled for a heartbeat, thick and heavy. Then, slowly, applause began. It started with the doorman, the quiet man who had dared to whisper the truth, clapping once, firmly. Then others joined, relief and admiration breaking through the shock. Soon the entire ballroom rang with thunderous applause, not for Isabella, but for Ethan's composure, his strength, his survival. Ethan lowered his glass at last, setting it untouched on a nearby table. He found the doorman in the crowd, their eyes meeting. With a rare softness, Ethan inclined his head in gratitude. That simple whisper had saved his life, and he would never forget it. The gala resumed eventually, though the air was forever changed. Guests spoke of the drama, of Ethan's calm, of Isabella's fall. But Ethan himself withdrew from the crowd, stepping onto a balcony overlooking the city lights. For the first time in months, perhaps years, he felt the weight lift from his chest. The mask had been ripped away, not his, but hers, and though the revelation was painful, it left him free. Free of illusion, free of betrayal. The night that had begun as a celebration of wealth and love had ended as something far more valuable, a lesson and a liberation. And as Ethan stood beneath the stars, he vowed never again to let charm blind him to the truth.